Dan Seider, thank you for joining me.
Thanks for putting this together.
How are you doing?
Doing pretty good. I mean, there's a cute dog on my lap. I'm chatting with a fellow entrepreneur, and I'm looking forward to connecting.
Wonderful. So where are you calling from? Where are you now?
I'm in Hayes Valley in San Francisco.
Hayes Valley.
Cloudy day. It was pouring rain earlier. I was on a call with a friend, and there was just a torrential downpour. And here I am, like trying to connect with them. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I'm in Southern California now, and it's still sunny here. So it's pretty interesting how, we're in the same state, but we could have such differing weathers. It's a beautiful day outside, even though from your camera, it kind of looks like it's very sunny. So I'll take your word for it. Mood tracking. What is it? I mean, you have quite a personal history with mood tracking from your article in the Huffington Post, but I'd love for you to tell me a little bit about what MISO is, and then tell me a little bit about yourself and how you even came to this thing.
Those are big questions.
Those are huge questions that we'll have to fit them in 20 minutes.
So you want me to have a 20-minute long answer to that question?
Oh, no. Let's just start. I have many more questions.
Well, I think mood tracking's an up and coming trend that most people don't realize that 10% of the population do it today. There's like a quarter of American adults track their fitness with some sort of automatic fitness tracker. And a quarter of American adults, yeah.
Holy crap.
And 2 decades ago, the concept of automatic fitness tracking did not even exist. Now that we have tools to automatically track our moods, like MISO, we're going to start seeing that same thing happening with this group of people who already track their mood and people who want to become more self-aware and generally happier. Like doctors, psychiatrists, they all recommend to do it. This is actually how I got into it. I was diagnosed bipolar disorder. I dealt with depression and anxiety, and my psychiatrists and therapists all said, Dan, track your mood. But I was so full of emotional hubris at the time that I thought, I know about how I feel. I don't need some flimsy piece of paper to write this down. I'm not going to gain anything from this. And
hey, how did they want you to track your mood? Like in what mechanism?
They gave me a piece of paper, and they were like, just write down how you feel.
Okay.
And this was quite some time ago. And now I finally, after stumbling on my feet and dealing with horrible depressions and hospitalizations, that I started learning that the more that I understood my mood and the more I understood how my behaviors and activities all impacted my mood, the happier I was, and the better I could control my mental health. And then I realized, oh shit, these medical professionals actually knew what they were talking about. Oh, wow. We have technology that can automatically track our fitness. Maybe one day we could have stuff that can automatically track our mental health. And that's when I set out on this journey to do it. 5 years later, we built an automatic mood tracker, and I'm excited to bring this to support other people with their mental health.
So, when you say automatic mood tracker, I'm automatically thinking about, heart rate and brain waves. So tell me a little bit about what is mood tracking and how is MISO specifically trying to solve this?
Yeah. So MISO tracks mood through our most expressive organ of our body. Dogs' usually most expressive organ of their body is their tail. We can look at a dog and we look at their tail and we can generally tell roughly how might they be feeling.
Sure.
With humans, we can look at their faces. And while it's not perfect, people have poker faces, people put on performative smiles, it's pretty good, especially if we look at trends over time. And we found that MISO, so we trained a model, happy to go into it, to predict people's level of happiness and sadness and anxiety through their face as they're on their phone or computer. And we got 86% accuracy.
So just so I get this right, the idea is that the model you trained is able to take a still image of a face and be able to give some sort of score for your mood levels on a variety of different scales.
You got it.
And so the first thing that I have to ask is, like you mentioned, I mean, people put on poker face, you know, I'm thinking automatically about theater and people being able to transform how they seem to a camera. You know, there are people who could smile at you on the street, and you know, I'm at Stanford now, and one of the things that they talk a lot to us about is mental health and sort of this duck syndrome, that as you wander the streets of campus, you meet a lot of people who seem okay because they look okay, but under the sea level, their legs are wobbling like a duck because they're racing or they're stressed about something. So you were able to overcome that sort of fakeness?
I think for the most part, when people are on their computer doing their work or looking at Reddit, or I think Zoom is actually an exception to that, where people are. I smile more when I'm chatting, and we learn what people's baselines look like, and then we compare their current state to their baseline, and that helps one overcome that problem. In general, we just don't face that problem generally because people aren't performative while they're on their computer, but then comparing to people's past overcomes the problem of like, what is a normal mood, which is a really big problem.
Yeah. So the idea is that, so it's not a single picture that's being taken. It's actually a sequence of pictures that you take throughout my day to be able to also catch me when I'm not looking at a camera and aware that I need to smile now so that I can seem happy during this conversation.
You got it.
And so what's been happening today? Has this thing? So I know on the website you wrote that it has worked for you. Is this something that's actually working?
Yeah, we just launched recently. We had a couple hundred people join the product with a variety of responses. Like one person said, they're so excited to be on here. Automatic mood tracking is revolutionary. And other folks are saying like, this is great. And they see a lot of potential in it. Like, I think it's very much in its early days, and I'm excited to see where it is to go.
Right. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about your experience with the bipolar disorder, if you feel comfortable, of course, sharing, because generally when people are facing these sorts of challenges like depression and anxiety and so on, they're not that quick to go on the Huffington Post and write an article about it. So I don't know much about it myself, and I'd love to learn more about what it's like and sort of how can a product like Misu help people with such issues deal with them.
I hear two questions in there, and the one is like, what is it like to deal with bipolar disorder?
Yeah.
And then the other is, how can mood tracking help people with their mental health?
Sure.
And that I dealing with bipolar disorder and not knowing how to manage my mental health put me through some of the most challenging times in my life. Like I after becoming manic, which I feel like this deserves a lot more than 5 minutes to go into, so I'm gonna like cut a lot of this out, but I was happier than I had ever been before. And one of my challenges with bipolar disorder is learning that sometimes there are certain states of happiness that actually aren't good for me, that my body will naturally go to a happier state. And I actually have to realize this and adjust my medication and adjust my behaviors. That took me a long time to acknowledge. There's the aspects of like the depression and the anxiety that come with bipolar disorder. I went through some of my darkest times where I lost I lost hope. I questioned, what is the purpose of being here? If I'm this sad, why do I want, and this is all that I can see continuing in my life. Why do I want to continue? It's not having those internal resources in my mind for how to manage my mental health and like learning how to do it has been a decade-long journey, and I'm going to continue learning and investing in it over time, because the opposite of poor mental health is just flourishing, and that's what I look for. So,
I mean, the one thing that struck me is you're mentioning that you were trying to sort of understand your mood levels and independently trying to gauge your medication levels and how you can treat yourself. Is that something that you can reasonably expect somebody who's undergoing, these inner turmoils to be able to sort of gauge their own medication and their own treatment?
something that I found really interesting, speaking to a user of our product, they said that they were considering stopping taking their meds. And they did. They looked at their mood data for that week when they stopped it, and it just tanked. And they figured, okay, maybe this is because of the meds. I'm going to try taking some more. They went back on their meds. The next week, they were actually in a much better place. And it turns out that's a very common thing to do. I've actually gone through that experience myself of stopping my meds. 70% of people, or 70% of medications that are prescribed by psychiatrists or mental health professionals aren't consumed by their patients. So because a lot of patients doubt them, there's horrible side effects. So if we're not grounded in reality for how these things overall impact our mood, which we like, we're just kind of going blindly. And I think these sorts of tools can help people make better decisions for their mental health.
Unbelievable. I mean, so first of all, I mean, it sounds like the journey that you went through is just tremendous. And obviously I could never imagine what it's like to go through that turmoil, not having gone through it myself. And I couldn't think then of somebody better than you to try and solve this problem using tech. So now you founded a company called Misu, and you're launching a product where you're trying to help others that are facing inner turmoils gauge their mood swings. Is this targeting people who have gone through similar experiences, or is this for anybody, that even the average Joe that just wants to know what they're feeling like?
Look, I think anyone who wants to invest in their mental health, this is definitely appealing to them. We found that people who are more likely to pick something like this up and try Misu are people who've used fitness trackers or track other parts of their life. And I think there's just this growing population of people who are interested in taking care of their mental health, especially now with what's going on in the world.
Totally. And I'm like one of the biggest advocates, I think, in the world for therapy and going to a therapist and being able to try and articulate your feelings over time, and having this objective persona give you consistent feedback and helping you through some things that you might not be able and apt to go through yourself. And what I've always told my friends is, it's crazy how we can invest so much time in fitness trackers and going to the gym and eating healthy and counting calories and so on and so on. But the amount that we invest in our mental health is minute compared to all of that.
So do you use Misu?
Well, I'm going to have to try after this conversation. That's why I'm so happy that we're doing this, because I mean, this sounds like something that every person should do. I was a commander in the Israeli military up until recently. And one of my responsibilities was also to have people serve under my command. And they tell you in Officers Academy, you're not a boss, you're not just a leader, you're a commander, you're a brother, you're a father, and you're a friend all at the same time. And it's some of our responsibility to also gauge our soldiers' feelings and be able to raise some red flags when things don't go as they should. And so I'm a huge advocate for what you're doing. Where do you see this going? Is this going to be sort of something that every person will have as an app on their computer and phone? Is this eventually also going to be some IoT that's in the house and tracking their walking habits and sleeping habits? Where do you see it going?
I think first thing is wherever it goes is figuring out ways that we can be very respectful of people's privacy, no
Sure.
matter what we do. And
Of
that's
course.
something that we stick to and stand to today.
Yeah.
I think moving forward is like, while we do very much care about effortlessly helping people understand their mood, we
Yeah.
care about improving it too. And I see this sort of thing, like we might have one of the largest, if not the largest data set on how people's moods change from when they enter an app to leave an app. And we're collecting like 100,000 sessions a day right now. And we're at a point in time where we have platforms like Facebook saying that 60% of the time that people spend on the platform, it's harming their mental health.
Really?
That's 600 million hours a day over of harmful usage. They've admitted this. Now,
Yeah.
we have dozens of members of Congress that are trying to hold these companies accountable to reducing their harm. And the missing part is the data. They don't have the data, and they don't have clinical studies, and researchers don't know how to capture this data past a sample of like 68, which was the largest, which was actually the research that Facebook shared, 68 people. Facebook's not doing this research. They shut down their well-being team. Like, we have a really big problem at our hands, and it's going to be even worse over the next like couple months as what's happening in the world today. And so we want to support anyone who's trying to hold these companies accountable so they improve our mental health, or they at least very much reduce our harm. Because the net positive, they are improving. I know I'm going on a long rant.
No. I mean,
here.
it's honestly, I have to say that it sounds like, I'm thinking of what type of CEO I want to be later on when I build my own company. And this is one of those things that it's a growing trend, especially in our generation, where we want to be socially responsible with what we're doing. And while, business is important and growth is important, I think that our generation of CEOs is becoming increasingly conscious of how are we impacting the mental health and creating a positive experience for our users. And I imagine that as a CEO, I would want to take your services to let me know, hey, this is what your app is doing to your customers, because this is not something that I could track myself. Obviously, it requires the expertise of a third party that has the data of all the other apps as well.
Yeah,
And I
I
also
think
want to know where I stand in comparison to other apps. So I'm in.
I'm glad. Well, let's get you using it for yourself first.
Definitely.
And yeah, I do see us heading to a trend where we have both consumers' behaviors shifting towards products that improve their mental health more because they're measuring it. And then two, is this coming from government or new policy that forces companies to reduce their harm or creates a lot of incentive, which means most of the products that we'll be using in the future as consumers, that if we want, we can have them designed to improve our mental health if we enable the right permissions. So it means, like, I see most consumer products in the future being net positive and significantly reduce their harm for our mental health. And that's a very different future to the world that we live in today. And it's one that I'm quite excited about.
Did you know that you're going to be doing something in this space? Is this, I mean, because obviously, I mean, it's not something that just any person would think of naturally, but I'm guessing that because of your experience, it helped trigger this.
I think it was 2 years, 2 to 3 years after my diagnosis, I wanted to give back to the community in some meaningful way. I kind of looked around and realized most of what we have for consumers is here to catch us when we fall. And I did not want anyone, if I could help prevent people from going through the experience that almost ended my life, that would mean a lot to me. So I wanted to create a system, or help design a system that reduced the likelihood and would catch people before they even get to a point where they're close on the metaphorical edge.
Yes. Wow. Well, Dan, it's honestly, it's so great to hear, and I'm really happy that we've finally connected, and I'm definitely gonna start using Misu, and I'll let you know what I think. Before we end, I'd love for you to tell me 3 words that you think best describe yourself.
This is fun. Normally I'm very like, I appreciate concision, but I think the complex situation here is like people have an impression of me for 25 minutes. And if my best described self is this like who I am with my closest peers, is this who I am on a public facing presence like this? So I suppose analytical might be one, just like reading from how I thought over the past 30 seconds. Loving was another that I answered a similar question to recently. And the last is playful.
I love it. Dan, thank you so, so much. It was great.
Thank you.
Of course.
Bye-bye.